Hello, everyone, and welcome to All Things Dyslexia, A2I Dyslexia Live Show. What a lovely day it is. It's absolutely beautiful out there. Bit of a sunshine going on there, which means I don't really need to take my vitamin D today if I can avoid it. I might go for a little bit of a walk later on, just to enjoy the beautiful sunshine there is. It looks like summer's quite close, if I can say that. Wonderful, and welcome to our live show. We have an amazing person who's joining us today. But before I introduce Will to come on and speak about his experience with dyslexia, his journey with dyslexia, and the strength of dyslexia and why he's doing the job he's doing, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Elizabeth Techi. I'm the CEO of A2I Dyslexia. I have the condition dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, and visual stress, which is also known as Erling syndrome. And I want to welcome everyone who's watching us today. I say live, it's actually been pre-recorded because Will's based in Australia, we're in the UK. We wanted to record it at a time where we're both, where it's not very late in the night. So we had to pre-record this show. So welcome everybody. Thank you for always watching the program. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for sharing. And of course, today's topic is my Dyslexia Evolution. And we have the amazing Will Wheeler, who is based in Australia, who's doing phenomenal work within the dyslexia remit as well as the neurodiverse remit. Will has had, honestly, I'm going to leave him to talk about his journey with dyslexia, and we will all learn something from this. And I always say to our viewers, nothing is impossible. If you set your mind to something, you can fulfill it to the best of your ability. Welcome to A2I Dyslexia, Will. Hello. Welcome.
How's it going, Elizabeth? Thank you so much for having me today. Wonderful. On this beautiful day in London.
How is Australia? Is it, you're probably morning, afternoon, evening?
No, it's very dark here at the moment. It's very dark. So yeah, look, it's a beautiful day here. As always, we encourage the rain when we can. But you know what? I remember, seeing the sunlight through your window right there, right now. London is such a beautiful, the UK is such a beautiful place when it's beautiful, sunny. And you know what? When it starts to warm up, it's pretty beautiful as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Will. Now, Will, before I get you to before we dive into your dyslexic journey, I just want to read a little bit about your biography. So Will is a proud dyslexic professional, founder of Dyslexic Evolution, and author of the Book of Dyslexic Motivation and Pictures. Sorry, had to pause there for a minute. He's based in Sydney, Australia, and works globally to help dyslexic people see the power of dyslexia by utilizing their strengths to stand out as professionals and promote innovation in their organizations. Well, over to you. Tell me a bit about yourself and why you feel it's so important to talk about dyslexia and your journey with it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much. I think, a little bit about me. So when I first started the Dyslexic Evolution, it first started out as evolution and leadership. I just wanted to, I love leadership, and I was always like how I needed to find a niche. And I remember my partner reached out to me and she's like, you're always talking about dyslexia. You're always, sharing these things on social media. Why don't you build a leadership company around dyslexia? And I thought, you know what, that's actually probably a really good idea. So, I looked into it. I had a look if there was anyone else doing it. There was absolutely nobody. I thought, how am I going to do this? And, just went for it. And it was really interesting because when I sort of started really building the Dyslexic Evolution, I found out it wasn't just about leadership itself. It was about a whole bunch of other things. It was about how do we find best supports to be able to support others? How are we able to develop in our careers? Because I was finding that a lot of people just weren't, it wasn't just leadership that was the problem. There was a whole bunch of things that really needed to, I suppose, be fixed to be able to help us really develop and grow. So if we look at universities, if we look at people leaving school, there's so many gaps there that need to be filled, and we're just there's just a whole bunch of work that needs to be done. So, and the journey has been funny, because what I've found since I've started, what my thought of was when I first started the Dyslexic Evolution has completely changed from what I first started. Now we're actually developing more into neurodiversity as a whole, which is fantastic, because we are really starting to see a boom in regards to a lot of the hard work that everyone's been doing within workplaces. And, we're really starting to take a foothold and really find ourselves and build a community around that. So, it's been really interesting.
So, well, tell me a little bit about your story with dyslexia. I was so blown away when you started talking to me about your condition, and it will surely lift some. It will surely encourage someone.
Yeah, cool. So, I think it's been really interesting, because I speak to so many, thousands of dyslexic people all over the world, and I remember being back in school and thinking, I'm dyslexic. I felt like I was the only person who was dyslexic, because it's not something you really like to talk about it when you're young. I had no idea what it was. Really, I remember getting tested for it when I was younger, and it just made no sense. All it was just like, okay, now we've got an answer for why I struggled in school. And I think the big thing was back in school then, we're going back to, say, late 80s, early 90s to late 90s, especially high school and all that. And, it's amazing to look back at those times and just see how much people didn't know about it. Teachers had no idea about it, regardless if my mother had gone in and spoken to a lot of these teachers and said, hey, look, my son's dyslexic. They still just had no understanding. They would still bully me, make me feel worthless. I remember all during school, even through high school, I was told, if you don't do well in school, you're never going to achieve anything in life. So for me, going through school, being bullied by my teachers a lot of the time, I found that, I hated school. I hated learning. Don't get me wrong, there were some great teachers and everything, but a majority of the time was very depressing, and anxiety was, I didn't even know what anxiety was back then, but now I look at it and I'm like, wow, that's what I was struggling with. I was afraid to go to school. I was afraid to get into trouble for things that I had no idea what I was getting in trouble for a lot of the time. So you can imagine that someone quite young, I was probably quite rebellious as well, and I'd never been brought up that way. So, I became a bad student. Teachers hated me and I hated my teachers. Not all of them. There were some really good teachers who actually took the time to spend more time with me. And I really enjoyed actually going to school when I had those teachers. But obviously, you can't have the same teacher your whole schooling life. So for me, all during school, coming into high school, you're told that if you don't do well in school, you're not going to be anything. So, I was getting towards my senior years of high school and realized that, I'm just going to fail. I remember my parents, and this was the thing, my parents, they were feeding off what my teachers were telling them a lot of the time. So, my teachers would be my parents would be telling me, you're not trying hard enough, this and that, and blah, 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 right? And that made it even worse. Now, that's not saying that I had bad parents. My parents are great. They're fantastic. They're so supportive, but they were just trying to do what they thought was best. So, for me, it just felt like it wasn't getting any better. So, for me, I started to mix with the wrong crowd, got involved with, drugs and alcohol from a very early age, had very big substance abuse for a long time there. I think probably, the biggest thing was, especially when I started using different types of drugs and all that, I think a big thing with using all of that stuff was it was instant, and I could get home from school after having a bad day, or if I was depressed or dealing with my anxiety, and it would just cure everything. And, I remember thinking to myself, you know what, this is great. This is great. I can just block out everything. And you know what, for about 16 years there, I think it was, I would just mentally block out everything from putting up a wall of drugs and alcohol. But you know what, I got to a point in my, after I left school, I got a job in warehousing, and then just, picking and packing orders, which was fantastic. I learned a lot of skills. But what I found, especially once I left school, is I started to develop all these great skills that I just developed on my own type of thing, which was different from everyone else. So from, leaving school, within a short period of time, I become a supervisor of a really large warehouse in Brisbane, in Australia. And then from there, by the age of 21, I was like the manager of this huge warehouse, like one of the youngest managers at that time. And you know what? I remember I was running something that someone twice my age should have been doing. And, I had it running like clockwork. And I remember thinking, I'm like, wow, you really can do some great things. You're really, great at what you're doing and all that type of stuff. And I remember people used to come to me and say, Will, it's fantastic. It blows me away seeing a young kid doing what you're doing. What are you going to do next, And I said, look, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I said, I'll never be able to better myself because I'm dyslexic. And for a long time, I kept telling myself that. And it was because I'd always thought, you're dyslexic, you're never going to be able to do any more or do better or whatever that was. And I don't know, I got to a point that someone, told me, hey, you're never going to achieve anything. You're always going to be the same. And it really was, the kick up the backside I really needed, because it really let me step back and go, hang on, you actually are good at what you do. You're brilliant at what you do. You're doing fantastic things. And, that was where I just went, okay, you know what? And I quit my job because I was sick of it, and then I just decided to travel. At that point in time, I was still having a lot of substance abuse problems as well. Because
let me stop you there one minute, because when you talk about substance abuse, we I think a couple of weeks ago, we did a live show on substance abuse, and it was really mind blowing for I think a lot of people, as well as myself, if I can believe about that. And when you were speaking just now, you said, look, once you took those, drugs or whatever they were, it just made you felt like all your problems were over. It's not the right thing to do. You and I know, and moving forward now. At the time, it seemed like the best thing to do.
Totally.
So, in terms of, would you say that's a common thing, maybe, in some people, like when you're going through a certain situation, i.e., you've got dyslexia, dyspraxia, you're not achieving well at school, and you look for help, and no one understands you, so you turn to that. Would you say people go down that route? Have you met who's kind of gone that route too? Yeah. What's the correlation in that? Do you think dyslexia and depression and all sorts of things could lead to that?
Yeah, look, I don't think everyone could lead to that. I think it was probably more the circumstances and the type of people I was around. And when I look back at it, it was, when I think back, because I was only thinking about it the other day, it probably was, I have as much to blame for that as, I can't blame everything on dyslexia, but I think a big thing for me was that I really didn't have any direction. I thought, I'm not going to be able to do anything else. So if I smoke weed or take whatever, it's not going to bother me because I'm not going to be in the type of job or have a career where I'm going to need to worry about thinking. That was my mindset back then, which was actually the opposite. So, thinking about those times, maybe some people may go down that route, but I think a big thing is when you've got, and my parents are great people. They were very busy business people as well. So, my parents weren't around a lot of the time. So it was just myself and my brother at home alone a lot of the time. So we just did what we felt like a lot of the time. So I think that, I think it depends on the environment the person's in. I also think as well that people will change when they want to change as well. I think that's a big thing for me. I found that I started using and people told, and it's funny because when you're in an environment where everyone else is doing the exact same thing, so in this case, taking drugs or drinking a lot, it doesn't feel like there's a problem. You just think that's normal. This is where, like, especially with the Dyslexic Evolution and what I'm trying to work towards, I really want to try to work with a whole range of people, but I really want to get into working with people who, seniors who might be struggling towards the end of high school there. So as well as starting the Dyslexic Evolution, I'm actually in the process of starting a career institute in university called Neurodiversity Academy, where people will be able to, who are dyslexic or autistic or ADHD, whatever that is, can come and learn at our school, because we want to teach differently. We want them to come to an environment that, hey, look, everyone's the same as you. If you struggle, great. The support's here, not, okay, you get into school. If you struggle, you got to do the best you can. And if you struggle, we might be able to help you as best as we can. But if you can't understand the way we do things, you're on your own type of thing. So honestly, I think if there's guidance for people, and I remember back in those days, there really wasn't any guidance for me. It was sort of like, look, we don't know what your son's going to be able to do. He's not doing really well in school. Where, what we should be saying is, hey, look, if your son or daughter isn't doing well in school, look, there's heaps of other options that these people can take. So not going, hey, look, if you don't do well in school, you're nothing. We should be going, hey, look, your son or daughter's not doing well in school. Here are some other options for them to take. You know what I mean? That's what we need to be getting across. And you know what? Maybe if I had that type of guidance back when I was younger, I probably would have taken a way different direction, having role models around who can say, hey, look, this is what happened to me, but to avoid that, this is what you can do. At the end of the day, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force them to drink,
So Will, where was the turning point for you? Where did you kind of look in the mirror and thought, actually, it's either I do something about this or I'm literally not going the right route? When was the turning point for you?
Yeah, look, the big one was when I first moved overseas. So once I quit my job in that warehouse and I just had enough of it, I was like, I want to do something different. I want to learn more. I went overseas, and I remember going overseas, to the UK actually, and I had never done anything like that before in my life. It was stepping well outside of my comfort zone. So, that was a big learning experience within itself. And it was interesting, while I was over there, I was actually, I was actually finding that I was attracting the same people that I was when I was in Australia. And I was like, and that was that was something that clicked in my head. And I'm like, something's not right here. And I remember sitting over there, still partying and having a great time, thinking I'm still attracting the people that I'm trying to get away from. Because that was the whole point to moving overseas, was to move overseas and really try to build a new life type of thing. And I was meeting the same people, hanging around the same people, and I'm thinking, this is strange. But yeah, I came back to Australia and then I just started hanging out with the same people again. It was no different. I thought, okay, and I ended up getting like better jobs and all that type of stuff. But I just found I could not progress, because it was funny. I was getting all these great jobs and I was winning awards in what I was doing because I was outstanding at what I did. But I was still hanging around the same people, and I found I wasn't progressing as fast as I could. And it was really interesting because what I found was around like all my friends, I was starting to realizing that I was starting to lose a lot of friends. It made me go, whoa, hang on. Is this normal, or is this, or is this, the environment? That was a real turning point for me. That was where I was like, okay, I've got to get the right help. I've got to see someone, look up, try and sort out my mental health issues. My mental health issues are always going to be there, but, there's a lot of things you can do to work with it, So I went and got a lot of help, and then I was like, that's it. I'm just going to focus on, building a business now and really changing who I was, because, I wasn't going to be able to, my goal is to build a multi-million-dollar international school that's all around the world. And to be able to do that, I have to be focused. And Absolutely. You cannot do that when you are in an environment where everyone's getting wasted and drunk all the time. You've got to be focused, Absolutely. So
I agree.
That was a big turning point for me there. So yeah, some things happen for a reason in life. They may not be the best things, but sometimes you've got to take the good with the bad type of thing. So yeah, that was a big turning point in my life, I think.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with our viewers. Will, almost forgot your name now.
No, it's all good.
Part of my dyslexia names, I would just forget,
Totally.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now, tell me, why did you choose the name Evolution, Dyslexia Evolution? Why is it that particular name for your organization?
Yeah, cool. So, I think the big thing was, so there's a few sort of things behind it. So, I was used to be into bands and all that type of stuff, and used to be the lead singer of a heavy metal band back in the day, all that type of stuff. And, I was like, I want something that sounds cool, so something like the Beatles, the Who, the Rolling Stones, something like that, right? So that's where the dyslexic came from. And then I was like, okay, so we are about dyslexia, so that tells us what we're about. And we're about trying to help people evolve and develop in their careers. So that's where the Dyslexic Evolution started, because we're about evolving. You want to always be evolving. Like, it's like me. I could be the richest person in the world, for example. I could know so many people, but I still need to keep on learning and updating, or else I'm going to become extinct type of thing. So that was the whole thing. And that's what we're about, is helping people to develop in their careers, helping them to continually improve, to meet different people, grow and develop. So yeah, that's a little bit about the name.
It's such a wonderful name. It just sticks in your mind, isn't it? You can't forget such an organization name. Right, I'm just going to move on to my third question here, Will. What advice do you have for any dyslexic who's actually watching right now and aspiring to be an author? Because you are an author, which I forgot to mention. in your bio.
Yeah, you know what? I sometimes forget that I'm an author too. Sometimes
Well
because
done.
I suppose being an author was never like something that I had ever thought I would ever do. So it's sometimes, yeah, it still blows my mind, and I sometimes forget because was never my, I suppose, goal was to ever become an author. But so. So can you just say the question again for a sec? Something about like would
What
my
advice?
advice?
What advice would you give to our viewers who are aspiring to be authors themselves?
Yeah, okay,
That's one
okay.
of my goals is to actually write a book. But because of dyslexia and all the other stuff that goes with it, it's always been like, can I? Will I? Shall I? And sometimes I kind of put pen to paper and I think, right, forget this, because I'm not getting anywhere with it, you know. So when I've been following you on LinkedIn since day dot, and when I finally saw your final book, you wrote it, I was like, what an inspiration. That is such an inspiration thing to do. And I am one of the ones that need this advice.
Yeah. Probably the biggest thing, you know, the funniest thing was when I was thinking about writing the book, I was doing the exact same thing. I was like, when should I start? When should I start doing this? You know, what would I write about? And for me, I just remember going, I'm just going to start now. And I just started writing, you know, I started with like, you know, if you read most books, and it was funny because they say that a lot of dyslexic people see pictures in their head. And, you know, so I just started to visualize what my book would look like or what a book normally looks like. So, you know, you're always, when a book starts, it's like almost like a movie almost. They have this thing at the beginning that's the intro. So I thought, okay, let's start with the intro here and then develop like this. So what I did with that, I actually had the intro, and then I then brainstormed every chapter. So I was like, okay, how do I want my book to go? You know, because what I found was when I was starting to talk to people or even do presentations at conferences or whatever like that, people were very inspired by my story. And in regards to that is where I've come from, you know, my drug and alcohol abuse problems to where I'm developing and building towards now. So I thought this is a great thing because not a lot of people, and this was something I realized, was not a lot of people have gone through a lot of the things that I've gone through. So it's really important to share that side of your story. And, you know, and I don't like to sugarcoat anything. So, you know, I was very open with a lot of stuff. And it was very interesting because when my mother read the book, she had no idea about some of the things that were going on because I was just, back in the day, I was closed up. I didn't want to tell anyone anything. I hated my parents because I was just this teenager who hated the world almost, right? So, you know, developed from there. And then I thought to myself, okay, what can I share in the book that's going to help people to develop? So then I looked at a lot of the things that I usually speak about in regards to help people develop. So things like goal setting, how to set up your LinkedIn page, why it's important for us as dyslexics to be building a network. How can we brand ourselves? You know, I think branding's a really big thing because if what you're able to do within your brand, you're able to showcase your strengths, and our strengths are so important as dyslexic people. So we're able to showcase ourselves. And I think as well with social media, especially and LinkedIn, we're able to connect with people everywhere, you know, and showcase our strengths through our brand. So, you know, developing on from that. And then I went and ended it on leadership because that's what our ultimate goal needs to be, is develop as a leader, because at the end of the day, what we want to do with dyslexic leaders is it's vital because they're going to help influence the next generation coming up And then that generation is going to influence the next generation. So it's going to be a flow-on effect. So that's why leadership plays such a huge role in the development of dyslexia or neurodiversity. And you know what? It may not even be neurodivergent people or dyslexic people that us as leaders may inspire. They may be people who are non-dyslexic who are like, wow, I had a dyslexic boss, or I met this dyslexic leader who was fantastic and I learned so much about them. Then those people might be open to dyslexic thinking or employing those types of people.
Absolutely.
It's a flow-on effect.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Will. And it's very, very true. For the next generation who, you know, I always say, I wish when I was growing up, I could have bought your book and read it. There was no such thing. I wish that there was a teacher I could have gone to and spoken to. I wish there was a live show like this that I could have, you know, run home after school and, you know, after having my dinner or something, sit down and watch it. There was no such thing. So what you're doing is so amazing, so powerful. And, you know, I just take my hat off to you. You've just really come out the other end so successful. And, you know, we're not talking about millionaire here, but we're talking about success in, you know, turning your life around and so forth. And that's really, really phenomenal. Really.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think a lot of people see success as money, but success is actually, and this is what I've learned, you know, because it's really been funny. I'm connected with some very, very wealthy people now. And you know what? That's something that I've, you know, I do. I'm not going to lie. I want to have, you know, some nice things and stuff like that because I've worked hard. I've struggled, right? And there's nothing wrong with having that. But, you know, what I have learned, especially from them, is that, you know, money at the end of the day doesn't mean that you're successful. You know, sometimes that struggle and reaching those goals, can be way better than money any day of the week. And you know what I often say, if I have someone reach out to me and go, man, because this is the thing, I have people all over the world who I don't even know half the time, who may have read my book or know me through something I've posted online or something, and they're like, man, thank you so much. I passed my test in something today. If it wasn't for Will Wheeler, I would not have had the confidence to do it. And I'm thinking, what did I do? Or damn, I don't even know who you are. But to me, that is better than money. Seeing other people succeed, that's what success is. And that's what I love.
Absolutely. And sometimes that value that you put on your work and the work you're doing would obviously you get rewarded for it. And if that's monetary, then of course, you know, so be it, because we all got bills to pay and we've all got lives.
Yeah. Look, I'm a big believer as in, like, you know, if you do the right thing, look, the money may come later, you know, I believe that will happen. But, you know, because there's a lot of people out there who make a lot of money very quick, but they've ripped off and, you know, slash people's throats to be able to stab knives in people's backs to be able to make that money. And you usually hear that they go bust in the end and they've got no friends. But if you take the long road, you'll definitely do well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Will. And just to let our producer put your book back up for me, The Dyslexic Evolution. There you go. I think it's coming up now. The Book of Dyslexic Motion in pictures. The story of Will Wheeler, life in pictures, and how to succeed as a professional who is dyslexic. Absolutely phenomenal. Now, you've got Audible of this book, and I've listened to it, and it's honestly, it's really amazing. It's just to listen to that. It was like, you can't put a price on it, to be honest.
Yeah, so it's sorry to cut you off, but it's actually not an audio book. I've made it a video book. So yeah, because the whole book, like the book, there's a lot of pictures in it, right? That's why it's good. And the reason why I first started to write it was based on a lot of the pictures that I used to share on social media, and I would share why I had that meme, for example, right? So, and then what I found was once I released it digitally. I'm actually thinking about re-releasing it because I released it last year in COVID and I never really got to have a proper launch or anything. So I want to relaunch it, and that's something I may do this year or next year. I'm not sure. But I found that a lot of people, because I was like, oh, I'll release it digitally and then people be able to use their assistive technology. But what I'm finding is that some dyslexic people still struggle to use that type of technology as well. So, you know, I had a few people saying, oh, look, I just don't know how to use that technology. So I ended up turning it into a video book where they could just see everything and watch it and listen back to it, you know, using the assistive technology. So, yeah, that's where I've sort of made it like that.
Wonderful. And we can get this book on Amazon, yeah? And
yeah, you can. Yeah, you can get that on Amazon at the moment. Probably when I re-release it, I'm going to have it as a hard copy and digital. So it will be available. I'm going to try and get it available across a whole range, but it's just really on Amazon at the moment.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And of course, our producers put that up there. You know, click on the picture to purchase through Amazon or Kindle. Thank you so much, Will. It's such a pleasure speaking to you today. Now, I have another question for you, and then we'll have to kind of round it all up.
Yeah, cool.
What strategies do you have in place to help you and your dyslexia on a daily basis? Do you use any assistive technology yourself?
Yeah, totally. I don't use all assistive technology. I think, I think a lot of people think that if you're a dyslexic person, you have to use all types of assistive technology, but I just use what I need and I find that sufficient. So a lot of this, and this is a thing that I actually talk about a lot in the book. I share a lot of technology and what technology I've used and other forms of tech people might find interesting. The problem is it's updating so often. I'm going to have to always update that chapter. But what I find, I use things like Grammarly that almost religiously. What I'm finding is a cool app as well is an app called Otter, where we can just place the when I'm in meetings and that, and it automatically records what's being said and puts it into a Word document. Okay. I also use a lot of my calendars and reminders a lot, which is good. But then I also still use old school things like my Post-it notes. If I wasn't moving from this apartment, there would be a whiteboard behind me here where I always just write random notes, all that type of stuff. So really, it's about finding what you like. And another big thing as well, I think with new technology, a lot of people feel a bit awkward using it at first, but I'd really suggest giving it a go for at least a month. If you can at least give it a go for a month, you will find you will start to get used to it. You will understand it a bit more. And then you'll be like, mate, I'm glad I gave it a go because it will just become, pardon me, such a useful tool in your life.
Oh, thank you for that, Will. I've tried every assistive technology out there. I think almost all of them. Read and write. I've got mind mapping as a tool. I've got inspirational. I've got a dragon. I use Clara Reed. I use scanning pen. I use dragon. And I think at one point I thought, you know what? You've got to narrow it down to 2 or 3. Because otherwise it becomes very chaotic. You know, you're kind of running around trying to use everything.
Totally. I think as well that depending on your environment, so say, I don't know, say if I was in a corporate office and I was in an open office, I'm not going to be able to use Dragon, so you've still got to do some, and this is the thing, like for me, I'll still type and do all that, but I might use Dragon for 1 or 2 words here and there. If I can't spell, I'll be like, I don't know, fantastic, and then keep on typing, instead of sitting there thinking, how do I do this? Sometimes I'll type something and even Grammarly will be like, man, I don't know what you're thinking, mate. I have no idea,
Yeah.
So yeah, you're dead right. It's just about finding what works for you and sticking with it.
Absolutely. Now, my final question, Will. One of your company values is dyslexia awesomeness. What are your top 2 tips for making dyslexia a strength?
Top 2 tips for making a strength. Obviously, probably sticking to what you're good at is definitely probably one of the best tips I can give you, and really focus on those strengths. You hear a lot of people going, oh yeah, you need to turn weaknesses into strengths. Now, the thing is, why would you do that if you've, and because they're your weaknesses. So say, for example, one of my weaknesses would be grammar and probably spelling. I'm a lot better speller than what I used to be, right? But I'm not going to waste my time trying to perfect that. I've got tools that I can use to fix that. And if it's for my book, I'll pay someone to look over that stuff, right? And that's what normal people do anyway. People don't write a book and then just release it. They have people look over it. That's normal, right? So, really focus on those strengths and try to improve those strengths. I think another tip as well is probably to continually learn, okay? And I think a lot of people get confused with learning by going to school and learning and life learning. Life learning is learning about maybe how your boss treated you today. How can I be a better person than that person, for example? Learning by going, oh, gee, I wonder what this is. I'm going to Google it or go on YouTube. Continually learning, right? Because I suppose, what's the word? Something about knowledge is strength or something like that. And if you, what's that say? Knowledge is
power.
Yeah. That's the one. So you know what? And this is the thing. But one more, if you don't mind. Treat people the way you want to be treated, because, we've dealt with a lot of stuff, especially in school, probably even the workplace as well. And you know what? If we've got the strength and courage to really develop and grow and inspire others, people will respect you if you respect them back. So definitely treat people the way you want to be treated.
Wonderful. And just to round it all up, Will, so you're working towards working with universities, with students that are leaving uni or the 3rd year, or is it students that need support? Tell me about part of your work.
Well, we're actually starting a university. So I'm partner. Yeah. So I've got investors coming on board. So we're talking some big business here.
That's amazing.
We've got some investors coming on board who, this is the thing, I work in, so for people who, I probably didn't mention it, but I work now in training and education, and I've been doing that for the past 12 years. So I'm very well connected within that industry. So I know a lot of people who I know them, it's been years of building contacts and everything.
Yeah.
And this was where I was like, you know what? And this was what was happening. I found so many people would come to me and go, I'm at university here and they don't know how to help me. I've told them I'm dyslexic, and then they're giving me resources to read. And I'm just continually hearing of people quitting because they're not getting the right support. And I'm like, even for me, reaching out to universities and even schools going, hey, look, this is what we need to do. A lot of the time they don't want to listen. So I'm like, all right, I've got the connections. I've got a lot of investors who can get behind me. We'll create our own school. We'll create our own university, and we'll disrupt education. Then you can come to us when we're doing things differently and people are loving the way we're doing things, and change the way you do things because we're doing it our way.
Wonderful. Now, this is obviously starting off in Sydney before you go globally. Yeah. So do you think we could have a university in London that's Dyslexic Evolution?
It probably won't be called the Dyslexic Evolution but the thing was, I was going to call it Dyslexic Evolution, and then because I'm so well known within the neurodiversity space globally, I just had so many people reach out to me and say, "Look, can you make it a neurodiversity college?"
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
I'm like, and I was thinking, I don't know. And then I was like, actually, I know loads of people who can support me and give me advice. So I said, okay, yeah, sweet, let's do it. We've got a lot to learn. We've got a lot to do, but we should be able to make it. But yes, it could be a possibility. Our goal is to have it. So what we want to do is encourage people to come to Australia for a holiday, like a year-long holiday, and maybe study with us at these early years, and then we might be able to build something in London. But that's the goal. We want to.
Who knows?
We want to build all over the world. We want to build all over
and one
the
thing
world.
I do know about dyslexic people: once we say we will do it, we do it. We will keep going till we see it to the end.
Totally. That's the best part. And I think the hardest part for me is I can always visually see what I'm working towards. And I think the anxiety and depression comes on sometimes because I can see it, but it's sometimes not quite there yet. And that's the hard part.
Oh, well done. Thank you so much, Will, for coming on A2I Dyslexia.
No, thank you.
Live show. Thank you for sharing your journey with us, your story with us. We honestly, I take my hat off to you. Thank you so much, Will. Keep up the good work. For our viewers who will be commenting and watching, if you need to connect with Will, you can find him on LinkedIn. You can find him on Twitter. You can find him on Insta and all the other social media platforms. Will, thank you so much. Take care of yourself. Look after yourself.
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. I really appreciate your time.
Wonderful.
And the amazing work you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Now, to our viewers, we'll be back next week, same time, same place. Please join us on all our social media platforms. Thank you. Look after yourself. Bye for now. Bye-bye.